Hi there, mathematicians. Today for our math workshop lesson, you're going to need your math interactive notebook, your blue resource folder that's inside of your anchor binder. Remember, do not take out your blue resource folder, but leave it right inside the anchor binder, but you may open up to it a glue stick, highlighters, and a pencil. So the first thing we're going to need to do is to find the teach page that we're going to need. When you open up your blue folder inside your anchor binder, on the left are going to be the teach pages that we're going to need, and the classwork is on the right. Today we're only going to need one teach page, so carefully unclip. Take out only the one that says page 12, parallel lines and perpendicular lines. Then very carefully put your clip back on, making sure that all of the rest of the teach pages are snug and tight. On the right side, we're going to take out the same lesson, so very carefully move the paper clip, take out the first sheet, then paper clip the rest of them to the back of the folder, close your blue folder, make sure it's still in your anchor binder, and then tuck that away. We're going to then open up our math notebook. On the inside cover, remember you have your multiplication song list and your flashcards. You can unclip those or untuck them and place them to the side so they're not in your way. And then turn to your page of the table of contents we're writing on. So we're writing on the table of contents that's on page 5. On the left side, we're writing the page numbers. So on Friday, our lesson was lines, arrays, and angles on page 10. So we're going to go back to page 10 to double check what pages we have. So we had page 10 and 11. That means that the next page we're going to have is a page 12. So you can go ahead and start by turning that page, making sure you only take that one page, turn it to the back, write a number 12, then flip it back to the table of contents. We're going to put a number 12 written down in our table of contents, and then we're going to write today's lesson title. So this is called Parallel and Perpendicular Lines. As you're working today, please remember that you are watching a video, so therefore you can go ahead and pause it as you get yourself caught up in case it's going too fast, and then you can push play when you're ready. So we put our title for page 12, Parallel and Perpendicular Lines, and it's taking place on 8-24-20. Now we go back to where page 12 is located. We get our teach page, turn it over to the back to use with our glue stick. When we use our glue stick, remember that we make a frame around the outside border all the way around like it's perimeter, and then we're going to put an X through the middle so it's crisscross. Then place that on the left side, which you've already marked is page 12. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to be using our highlighters to help highlight some of the important information that we have. So the first thing I'm going to do is highlight today's title so I remember what our focus is. So we're learning how to identify parallel lines and perpendicular lines. So on your page, you will see that there is a definition for parallel lines first. So we're going to take our other highlighter. So I'm going to take my yellow. You can use whatever color you would like as long as you are using a color you can see through. So it says parallel lines are lines in a plane that are always the same distance apart. And I want to make sure I underline that phrase, same distance apart. And then it says parallel lines or line segments never meet. So I'm going to box those two last words, never meet, because that's going to be really, really important. And because it says parallel lines or line segments, I'm going to go ahead and circle that or, because I know that's going to be important information. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the symbol that represents parallel lines. When we see a symbol, this is how we mark an answer, or when they identify what they want us to locate within an example. Parallel lines look like it's a number 11. Two skinny lines that are side by side, but they do not touch. So I'm going to just draw an arrow to say that is parallel lines. The next part is going to be going over this figure. So we're going to use an example to learn how to identify those parallel lines. So it says in the figure, lines AB. So I look at lines AB. So I look for the point that has A and B on it, and they're referring to that top line that's going horizontal. I'm going to go ahead and take a highlighter to make sure that I can identify which line they're labeling. And CD, so I look for points C and D, and I'm going to highlight that next line they refer to with those 2 points. Even if they're extended, will never meet. So that means with those arrows on the end, if they continue on forever in both directions, they will never cross paths. So they will stay the same distance apart forever. The lines are parallel, so I'm going to box that word because it's an important vocabulary word. So we write that line AB is parallel, and you can see the symbol that we just drew up at the top, represented in this example, is parallel to a line CD. So the 2 green lines will never touch, so that's represented with that mark. Another way to say it, instead of writing the symbol above, would be write the word lines AD for this next one. So I'm going to use a different color, AD, so I see the 2 points. I'm going to trace over the line that's represented. And points BC, I'm going to use the same highlighter, are also parallel. I'm going to box that word parallel since they're using this important word again. So, and then they show it in a different form. That symbol above means line, so line AD is parallel to line BC. So once again, the first one they've given us, A and D, we have arrows on the end to say that those lines will go on forever and ever to the top and the bottom. It will never touch line BC because those lines will stay the same distance apart. The next part is going to then talk about lines that will touch. So we're going to go to the next one, highlighting. They are called intersecting lines. Intersecting might sound familiar because we think of intersections. Intersections are things that we might encounter when we're on a road and we cross over another road to get to a place that we're going to be traveling with our parents. So intersecting lines cross at exactly 1 point. So I'm going to go ahead and box that really important part of that definition, exactly 1 point. So it crosses over 1 time. Intersecting lines that form right angles, so this is going to tell me that if it actually forms a right angle, it's going to then be called perpendicular. So perpendicular means that it makes a right angle exactly, which means there's a box that can be slid to the wall, to the floor. So when we mark parallel showing 2 lines that will never touch, we need a symbol that means perpendicular, and that looks like an upside down letter T because we can fit 2 boxes on either side or 90-degree angles. So I'm going to just point an arrow to say this is a symbol for perpendicular lines. So they cross over at an intersection 1 time, making a 90-degree angle. And just like we did above, identifying with the figure parallel lines, we're going to use the same figure to identify perpendicular lines. So it says in the figure lines AD, so AD is the orange line on the left, and AB, that is the green line at the top, are perpendicular because they form right angles. I'm going to box that word as a reminder. How I identify perpendicular as a right angle at vertex A. We should remember that a vertex is like an elbow. We talked about that during our lesson on angles. So we're looking for the point that's an elbow that makes that a 90-degree angle. So it says, right, the line AD is perpendicular, has that symbol that's like an upside down letter T, the line AB. They're also giving us an example of lines BC. So BC is the other orange line on the right, and line CD, that's the green line on the bottom, are also perpendicular. So I'm going to just make sure we go back and underline those important vocabulary words. So then we represent it with line BC as perpendicular to CD. And we know that that is going to show that it is a 90-degree angle at the vertex C. So it's the elbow that has the two lines meet or intersect one time. Now when we continue to move down, we have some more examples. So we're going to look at the next section. It says to use the figure for 1-3. So this is going to be 1-3 means questions 1 through 3. The first question says to name two sides. So two sides that appear to be parallel. So we need to remember some of our vocabulary. So parallel meant that it's going to be two lines that are equal distance apart and they never meet. So when we look at our two lines of this shape, we have to find the ones that will never cross. So pause this video for a moment, see if you can identify which lines will never cross paths. When you're looking for your answer, you have to remember that when we talk about a line, it means if it can continue on forever, it will not cross. So it's sometimes helpful for us to draw dotted lines to show how they would extend. So if we were talking about the outside two lines, we can see that they would eventually cross paths if they continue to the top. The lines that are going horizontally will not cross paths because they're of equal distance if they continue on in both directions. So when I identify the parallel lines, I find the 2 points of the lines and I represent it using the symbol for parallel. So I'm going to draw the symbol for line, the point VR. Underneath it to represent my first line is parallel, so two skinny lines, and then the line on the bottom. So once again, it's the line on top, and that is TS. The next question says to name two sides. So I'm going to do something similar, two sides, but this time instead of parallel lines, it's asking us to find perpendicular lines. So looking at that vocabulary word, we can look back at our second definition to figure out what they're asking us to identify. Go ahead and pause the video to see if you can identify two lines that meet at exactly one point that forms a 90-degree angle. When looking at the same figure, we have to look at the inside angles. Oftentimes our figures will have boxes to indicate a 90-degree angle. So on this particular figure, we see there are two boxes. We only need to represent it by using one of those examples. So I'm going to start by looking at the top line. Once again, I'm going to use the points VR. So I draw my line with the 2 points underneath it. The symbol for perpendicular is the upside down letter T. And then the side line that is intersecting at that 90-degree angle is going to be represented by an RS. So I draw the line symbol, RS. You could have also done the intersection of this perpendicular angle to say line TS is perpendicular to line SR. And there are other examples that you could use in reverse for the same lines. And our last example says name two sides. So I'm going to once again box important words. Two sides that appear to be intersecting. So intersecting means crossing with one point, but the most important part says not perpendicular. So if it's not perpendicular, but intersecting still, it means it crosses, but it doesn't make that 90-degree angle. So I have to remember it's just going to be smaller angle on one side, and then it's going to have a larger obtuse angle on the other side. Pause the video to see if you can identify an intersection that is not perpendicular. For this particular example, you should then once again look at your angles on the inside. If we said the boxes represented 90 degrees or perpendicular, the other two angles would represent angles that were not 90-degree angles. So I'm going to talk about using this first example. So at vertex T, the first line I could say is line VT, and then I look at the line TS. So I can say, oops, T is kind of crooked, and then S. You could have also used this intersection or the vertex V and said line VR, and then you would have VT as your second line. Today for classwork, you're going to use the page that we pulled out. You are not going to use the right side today, so you can go ahead and put a number 13 on the top right corner, and then put a line through it diagonally. In the future, we are going to be using the left and right side for each lesson, but as we're getting started, we're not going to start that setup quite yet. So for classwork today, write classwork at the top, and you are going to once again take care of completing the even numbers only. So go ahead and write that at the top of your page, and then you're going to go ahead and then circle the ones that you're going to actually solve for. So that's number 2, number 4, number 6, number 8 on the front. Turn it over to the back and solve for numbers 2, 4, and 6. Today for this lesson, I want you to take a picture of your completed teach page. That's pages 12. And then both sides of the classwork worksheet that we will check together tomorrow morning during our morning meeting. So remember, you're submitting 3 pictures, teach page, front of the classwork, and the back of the classwork.